Hello.
Hello.
Cool. We are now live on YouTube. Hmm.
I see some of my Atlantic Plumbing neighbors are joining us. Welcome, everybody.
Good evening, everyone. I'm going to give it just a couple more minutes. Our first presenter isn't here yet either way, so. All right, we can go ahead and get started. Wait, where did that one thing go? I do not see any of our other panelists in the audience. So if there's anyone that's on the committee that I did not promote already, please feel free to raise your hand and I will promote you. But with that, we will go ahead and get started and I will share my screen and you should be able to see the agenda. So thank you everyone for coming out tonight to the September meeting for ANC 1E's Transportation and Public Spaces Committee meeting. Just a few quick announcements. This meeting is being recorded and live streamed to YouTube right now. Closed caption is available for each user by clicking the button on the toolbar below that says closed captions. And you can submit questions through either the Q&A function located on the toolbar below, And if you are calling in rather than participating through the web, you may raise your hand by dialing *9, and to unmute or mute yourself, dial *6. And with that, I will get things kicked off. So the first thing we will do is go through the committee roll call. So I will call the roll now. And again, if you are in the audience and you are on the committee, please raise your hand and I'll make sure to
Commissioner
get
Jacobson,
you invited.
we do have somebody who raised their hand, Carl Forberg.
You know, I think that actually might be committee member Schaaf, and he's logged in under someone else's name. We're just going to promote and hope that that is correct. I have a vague recollection of him signing in as Carl before.
Oh, that was, yes. Sorry
yes.
about that.
Wasn't smart enough to remember just from looking at the list, but thank you for joining. So I will go through the list now. Commissioner Gallagher. Commissioner Gallagher is not here. Commissioner Lancaster.
I'm here.
Commissioner Ray is also not here. Commissioner Brown. Not here. Commissioner Newland. Not here. Commissioner Jacobson, here. Commissioner Footer.
Present.
Committee member Batal is not here. Committee member Schaaf.
Here.
And committee member Remington, not here. Okay. Other thing to note is that this meeting was noticed to the community via listserv, social media, our website, and the e-calendar. I'll just quickly show the entire agenda. So we have the consent agenda for just the meeting minutes from July. Several items under official business around our past resolutions. Great presentation on open streets. We'll be learning more about the DC Smart Street Lighting Project, East Towers Development Public Space application, and then also Hoops for Hope amplified sound permits. And then if time allows, just because we have a lot on the agenda, there's a street safety hearing on October 4th and wanted to see about putting together testimony for that. And then we are good to go. So I will make a motion with unanimous consent to adopt the agenda. If there's any dissent, please state so now. Otherwise, we'll just go ahead and approve it. Hearing no dissent, the motion is approved. Next up is the consent agenda. Just a reminder that all matters listed under consent are considered by our committee to be routine and enacted in one motion. I will now make a motion a motion with unanimous consent to adopt the consent agenda. Hearing no dissent, the motion is approved. Next, we have our community announcements and presentations. For folks that are not already on the official business list, if you have anything in the community that you would like to make a public announcement about, you can feel free to raise your hand now, and I will give you the floor for a few minutes. Go ahead, Commissioner Footer.
All right, thank you. I'm looking just at the attendees list and I see a number of neighbors from Atlantic Plumbing who joined us tonight. Thank you guys so much for coming. Really excited for you guys to have an opportunity to ask questions for the East Towers Development public space application. I just wanted to let you guys know that the email that went out through the building app, there was an attachment to it, and the attachment included the presentation for tonight. So if you missed that and you wanted to take a look at it as we're going through today's agenda, feel free to go back to the app and the email that was sent out over the weekend and take a look at the attachment that was there. I wanted to give everybody just a quick update on a couple of things with respect to the 8th Street transportation package. making some great movement and headway with DPW and DDOT. A couple of things we need to follow up on because there might have been a miscommunication on who has responsibility over it, specifically around picking up a couple of pieces of illegal trash and placement of trash bins, but making good headway on turning the 8th Street and Berry Place into a 3-way stop, and talking to the different developers about the 1-way versus 2-way and parking around the neighborhood with the 3 different buildings that are going to be coming up. For people who are joining us from AP, I'll be releasing a quarterly newsletter in the coming days or weeks, definitely in September, and I'll have some additional information on there. If anybody wants to reach out and talk about any particular transportation or any other issues in the neighborhood, please feel free to reach out to me. My email is 1e07@anc.dc.gov. And that's it.
All right, thank you, Commissioner Footer. Any other members of the public that would like to make an announcement? All right, we can move on. Next up is a official business. I will just briefly touch on our TPS related resolutions from our July meeting, and then we'll hear a presentation from Kimberly Vodka from DDOT. So just really quick, the ANC passed the 2 resolutions that the TPS committee passed back in July. So that was a resolution calling for a task force to boot and tow frequently speeding cars. That was passed, I think, 7-0-0, so it was unanimous, or at least it was unanimous. I don't remember the exact final vote count. And then the public space permits with our caveats for the Howard Lot 3 residential project that also passed through the full ANC and was sent along to DDOT. And now we will go ahead and give the floor to Kimberly Vodka, and I will go ahead and promote her.
Hi, everyone.
Hello, and would you like me to share the presentation? I think you mentioned you might not have great Wi-Fi.
I can actually do it. I can do it.
Oh, cool.
Thank you so much. I was trying to be prepared just in case. I'm at a pickleball tournament. So I love being outdoors as open streets. It just spreads into my personal life too. Okay, I'm going to share my screen because I have a quick presentation together for everyone. And okay, can everyone see this? Great. Okay, yep. So have 5 minutes, so I'm just going to breeze through everything. This is not our first time coming to your community and to your neighborhood, but I know many people may not know what Open Streets is, I've heard of it, or even still to this day. So I'm Kimberly Vodka. I'm a transportation planner at the District Department of Transportation. I'm also our public space activation coordinator. So I do everything related to streeteries, parking day, parklets, but most importantly today, Open Streets. We this year have partnered with Nedium Consultants, who is our event planner and helps us with all the event logistics of running an event such as Open Streets, which is very unique. And so they will be on the ground with us to facilitate all things Open Streets. So for those who may not know what this is not new to the world. This actually began in 1970 in Bogota, Colombia through Ciclovia. But we've brought it to DC and deemed it Open Streets. And essentially it seeks to reimagine streets to prioritize people over cars. So we closed 3 miles of Georgia Avenue to vehicles and open it up to people to safely walk, bike, skate, scoot, learn about transportation safety from transportation professionals at DDOT, WMATA, at WABA, things like that. Participate in a range of fun and family-friendly activities, which I'll go into in a bit, and also support local businesses on the route. So unlike an 8th Street Festival or an Adams Morgan Day, which brings in outside vendors, we do not allow that. We only allow businesses on the route to participate in Open Streets to help promote them to event attendees. So what are the benefits, right, of prioritizing people over cars? The protected road closures ensure that people can freely and safely enjoy public space along Georgia Avenue, which is one of our heaviest arterials in the district. And so there's 4 main buckets, which is health, giving people the opportunity to ride and play in the street safely, promote outdoor activities. There's the economy piece, which is to help people discover local businesses and bringing in thousands of people on foot traffic that normally would not be in that environment doing what we're doing. The environment, so we're removing vehicles for one day and helping people discover alternate modes of transportation, from biking to scootering to walking, even to bus information we'll have there as well. And lastly is community, which is we're creating a new space for people to come together and connect with your fellow neighbors, your neighborhood, and rediscover or discover the amenities that it provides. In 2022, we actually hosted 6 open streets events. The one on Georgia Avenue last year was on Saturday, October 1st from 9 to 3. This, if you attended, we will remember this is our first open streets with horrible weather. So we were experiencing inclement weather from Hurricane Ian, very windy, very rainy. So unfortunately, a lot of our activations and businesses did not activate the street, but we still closed it. This is a rain or shine event. So we had, this event actually has the highest percentage of participants that come from the surrounding neighborhood. So there's this perception sometimes that this is not for the community that we bring this to, but ultimately that is who attends and comes out to these events, which is super helpful and good for us to have that data from our surveys. But we heard overwhelmingly in the responses on our surveys, they want more business participation, which we're working on and have good news about, to do this more often with longer hours and have a more accessible website, which we do have now, and I can talk about at the end if needed. So for this event, this will be on Saturday, October 7th this year from 9 a.m. to 3 p.m. on Georgia Avenue from Berry Place to Missouri Ave. So it's the same 3-mile closure that we've done going back to 2019 in our inaugural event. People of all ages and abilities are welcome. No cars will be allowed on the route, but there is a metro rail station right in the middle at New Hampshire. So many, many ways to get there. There is no cost to attend, so we really welcome anyone to come through. No ticketing is required. And if possible, please walk or ride to open streets. The roads will be closed for 3 miles on Georgia Avenue, creating detours everywhere else in the neighborhood. And so we really recommend taking alternative modes of transportation to get here. And we'll have guides on our website about how to do that. The route will be closed to traffic from 7 to 5. So 2 hours before and 2 hours after the event. And courtesy tows on Georgia Avenue will begin at midnight on Saturday, October 7th. So if you typically park your car on Georgia Avenue, please move it before Saturday, October 7th. As mentioned before, this happens rain or shine. And we will have water stations and bathrooms on the route, as well as the participating businesses may open their doors for water and bathrooms. And as always, free swag. So on our website, which I'll show at the end, we have posted all of the affected bus routes. There are 8 routes that are affected, showing the stops that are closed, but also the detours for all 8 routes. So you can go to the Georgia Avenue page and click on whichever bus route you're interested in learning more about. And we also have our vehicle detours posted. So this is the same as years before, where traffic will be diverted from Georgia to Missouri, 13th Street, Berry Place, and Bryant Street at the southern end, and then North Capitol Street to the east. Cars will not be able to cross Georgia Avenue at all at any section, so you have to go all the way around. But if you live in the blocks immediately adjacent to the route, you will be able to access your home. There'll just be a police officer there that will be able to let you through. So please, if you're driving that day, note these detours and plan in advance. And we also share this with Google and Waze and Apple Maps and things like that, so they can integrate it into their systems. Some expected programming that you can expect to see this year are bike maintenance and safety riding lessons, live music with a go-go band, a pop-up pickleball court, Foamboree, which is a classic we started last year and has been a hit ever since, free fitness and yoga classes, roller skating lessons, arts and crafts, a kids zone at Bruce Monroe Park, facilitated through DPR, hula hoop instructions, rest areas, and a whole lot more. We have a major announcement coming this year for programming that is expected to be released next week. I will send it out to all the ANCs once it's live, but I'm really excited about this announcement. It's going to be something we've never done before. So just want to pique your interest a little bit. And then lastly, If you have any questions, feel free to reach out to me directly or to our email at openstreets@dc.gov. All information about the event will be posted to our website, which is www.openstreets.dc.gov. And that's it. Thank you so much.
Awesome. Thank you so much for the presentation. Really appreciate that you were able to get through all that so quickly. Couple of quick questions from me. First, is the exciting announcement Beyonce performing at Open Streets? You
It is not. Oh,
okay. Okay, cool.
You're going too long.
Yeah, it's okay. Okay. Just wanted to clear that up for the community. The second piece is, do you already have like planned activation for all of the route? I ask a little bit selfishly because I'm working with some neighbors to plan potentially a block party adjacent to it, but might be running into some issues with that. So looking at contingency plans, and if the neighbors wanted to activate a portion in the neighborhood, is that something that they could do?
I would love to do that. We did that for the first time on 12th Street Northeast this past June, because a year ago we had a pop-up rogue block of residents come out and set something up, and it was awesome. It was the coolest thing. And so now I want to facilitate that. So yes, please reach out to me and we can figure something out. Ideally by Friday if possible, because we are trying to confirm programming basically the end of next week. So I have a walk with MPD tomorrow and with our event planner to confirm placements for things. So it's still tentative, but we're hoping to confirm that ASAP.
Cool. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Other folks on the committee? Commissioner Footer?
Really quickly, for people who are going to be driving and need to get into those areas, how do they demonstrate that they live there? Do they have to have their driver's license? Is it word of mouth?
Sorry, it's hard to hear. Is it?
For people who need to get into these access points because they live on that block and it's closed, how do they demonstrate to police that they actually live there?
You know,
they have to have driver's license.
Great question. I believe they typically just say that they live there, and MPD usually lets them through. They might just say, like, what's your address, and provide it. I honestly don't know, but I can follow up with MPD. I have a meeting with them tomorrow, so I can shoot you an email just to confirm. We've never had a problem with that in the past, but I can get the details.
Awesome. And then the cleanup plans for after the event? Yes.
So we basically we have volunteers coming to help us clear everything out of the roadway. We also have DPW scheduled for street cleaning services after. So they come before the event to clear all the trash and clean the streets, and then they come after to do the same.
Awesome. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Commissioner Lancaster?
Hello, can everyone hear me?
Yep.
Okay, perfect. I think my question is, if there's a business that doesn't live on a strip that wants to be involved, like a pop-up, is it possible they can pop up somewhere along the route, or it's just absolutely for businesses that are already on the route?
So we only allow businesses that are on the route to activate public space in front of their business. If they wanted to partner with a business that's on the route, we do allow that. Some businesses are doing that and bringing in other businesses from the community. And as long as they're supportive of it, we're okay with that. But the reason we do that is to really truly promote those businesses that are affected by Georgia, by the Open Streets event, and to highlight them to attendees.
All right, thank you so much.
No problem.
And are there any members of the community that have questions or comments? For those that are in the community that might have questions or comments, you can feel free to either raise your hand, and then if you're dialed in, you can raise your hand by dialing *9. All right, seeing as no one is raising their hands, I think we are good to go.
Awesome, thank you so much. And
Kimberly, thank you so much for the presentation, and really looking forward to this event. It's one of my favorite of the year, so hope to see you there.
Okay, thank you.
All right, next up, we have a presentation from Sharon Bland and Elise Ballard from the DC Smart Street Lighting Project. I see Elise and Sharon, if you're in the audience, if you could just raise your hand. Okay. And I'll be promoting both of you to panelists.
Hi there, how are you all?
Good, how are you two doing? Thanks so much for joining tonight.
So yeah, I got married, I had a name change. So I am Sharon Wilder, formerly Sharon Bland. Good to be with y'all. I'm with the plenary infrastructure DC team. I have my colleague Elise Ballard with me. And do you have my PowerPoint, or do I have screen share?
You have screen share and I do not have your PowerPoint. So if you could share that with me afterward, that'd be great.
Okay, here we go. All right. You see that okay?
Yep.
Okay, great. So welcome to DC Smart Street Lighting. And as you, I'm sure, have heard, sorry, I'm getting tied up. What we've embarked upon over the past year now. And we've really gotten underway the past couple of quarters, actually. So what we're doing is we are modernizing 72,051 streetlights. We're converting the streetlights to LED technology. We're adding remote monitoring and control capabilities and increasing our sustainability effort for the city. We're also reducing streetlight energy consumption by more than 50% and eliminating 38,000 tons of greenhouse gas emissions annually. As I mentioned, our project timeline, we started rehab work in first quarter of this year. And then we moved into conversion work, where so rehab is like making sure that the poles and everything are able to sustain the lights that we then convert. And then we've been doing the conversion work ever since. We also at the same time launched our asset management, where we get the call to replace lights, what have you, and manage that asset. So in our design and construction phase, as you can see, we started with group 1, which was wards 5, 7, and 8. We are working on the next phases of our work upcoming. Our tasks include detailed design, procurement, and mobilization. Our rehab work is what I was mentioning earlier, sporadic work to upgrade foundations, poles, making sure the arms are in good condition. And then it will happen also sequentially per groups of wards. So our conversion work, which is the actual installation of the lights, occur per groups of wards, and then they are split per ANC, which is why we wanted to make sure that we spoke with each single ANC single member district. So each ANC is to split into bundles with less than 5 bundles per ANC. And work within a bundle will not last more than 14 days. We're going to be in, we're going to be out. With regard to our asset management, it's just basically as it is, streetlight maintenance. That preliminary asset management service began last fall. And then the full asset management service began in the first quarter of 2023. And of course, we'll be continuing as LED lights become available. So by May, we're expecting all new LED lights to be installed, and then we'll continue with the asset management portion of this work. Outreach and engagement has been that we notify each ANC by mail, by email, 45 days prior to the start of work. And then 7 days prior to the start of work, we make sure that we leave door hangers for residents, and also information cards with businesses providing notice of upcoming work and advising of no emergency, no parking. And this really will include a range of, for the duration of the work on these materials. So, we'll say it'll be 3 days we expect to work, or, a week or 14 days. And then 72 hours prior to the start of work, we'll be hanging those emergency no parking signs. And so how do you stay connected? Well, you definitely scan here to view our website and to view the project FAQs. We do have our own website, streetlights.dc.gov. And there's places to plug in if you're media, places to plug in just if you want to receive project updates. And then, certainly connect with us on Facebook and Instagram. So that is our presentation. May I take any questions? And Elise is here to help in that regard as well. So Brian, looks like you're first.
Yeah, go ahead, Commissioner Footer.
Thank you. I have to say I'm very excited about this. I've experienced firsthand how amazing these have been. There's a brand new street right in front of my building. It's W Street. It was just built. And with it, we got a number of these brand new streetlights. And I got a resident had reached out and mentioned that it was really bright. And I'm not sure if you said this before, but I'll just emphasize that you guys have the ability to dim the lights, and it has like a 360 capability. And so you can dim one side without affecting the street kind of illumination. It was spectacular. I reached out to you guys in like a week I reached out to you and within a week it had been done. I'm looking at it right now and it's like perfect. So first, thank you guys so much for your hard work on this. This is fantastic. I guess two questions really. One, you were talking about retrofitting old streetlights and all that. I did put in a request through DDOT, specifically Mignon, and I can't remember if we put a 311 request in around this, but essentially she was going to reach out and talk to you guys about 5 specific single arm pendant poles that are on 8th Street and see if they were eligible for this updating. 2 things to just kind of consider. One, they are probably going to be taken down within the next 2 to 3 years because there are 2 very large pieces of development that are going to be happening in this neighborhood. So I wanted to kind of emphasize that hopefully that's not a major deterrent from trying to update those. There's been a lot of increased crime in this area, and after talking to MPD, one of the contributing factors is that the illumination on 8th Street is quite dim. And so I would really like to emphasize that it would be great if those could be candidates. I'm happy to follow up with you to make sure that you guys know exactly what I'm talking about. I'll ask that first question and then I'll get to my second one.
I can take this one, Sharon. Brian, I didn't catch your name, or I didn't catch the name that you said at DDOT, but I can put my information in the chat. And I guess for everyone's benefit, my name is Elise Ballard. I am with Plenary Infrastructure DC, so I oversee kind of the broad range of the project design, the design builder, as well as the asset manager that Sharon described. And then obviously I liaise with DDOT as well. So I can put my information in the chat because I didn't catch that name. And I will follow up with our contact on the streetlights team and just see if that's something that they can work with us on.
That'd be awesome. Thank you so much.
Fantastic.
And then my second question is, so are all new developments going to have this technology and capability? And right now you're really emphasizing on retrofitting already existing things?
Yeah, that's a great question. So the second part of your question, the answer is yes. Like, this is largely a rehabilitation, like you said, retrofitting project where we are replacing the existing with a new LED, more efficient, more sustainable fixture. That said, there is some, I don't want to say leeway, but there's some availability in our contract to expand. Again, that kind of stuff has to go through DDOT. But I think that the intent, without speaking for DDOTs that are not here, I think the intent is that in the future, all the fixtures will be consistent and the same across the board. And, DDOT recognizes that there's constant development, both, coming from the government side, as well as coming from other private developers that's happening in the district. So there is availability to do that kind of work under this contract. It hasn't been exercised just yet, but that, I think that's definitely a consideration of DDOT that we're willing to work with them on. But largely the base contract that we're here to present on is the retrofitting that you described.
Perfect. Thank you so much.
Yes.
Committee Member Schaaf.
Thanks for the presentation. Looks like a great initiative. I just wanted to ask, is this the 45-day notice for ANC 1E? And if not, do you have a timeline for when we might expect work in our ANC? Thank you.
So this is the 45-day notice. That said, I know we've gotten ahead of, again, I don't work for the contractor. I oversee the contractor. I know that we've gotten ahead of ourselves. So yes, there's a minimum 45-day notice. I think sometimes they're very much ahead of the game, and it might be a little bit longer than that. I believe on our streetlights.dc.gov, there is a better schedule. I want to say we're getting to Ward 1 early next year. But I could be wrong there. So this is the 45-day notice. That said, there is not a max time that we have to provide notice under our contract.
Yes, as a matter of fact, I was looking at the project schedule, and we're technically won't get to you until January, but we want to give you plenty of notice. So yeah, and you all were very responsible when we reached out to ask if we could meet with you. So thank you.
And I guess, we could, to add on to that, right? I'm glad I said that date right. And I'm glad, Sharon, you checked me on that. We're happy to continue the conversation, right. Continue to, provide outreach as that time gets closer as well. And, Sharon is a good contact. I'm a good contact. Anyone, listed through this QR code that we have up on the screen is good as well. So happy to continue the conversation, but it is a requirement that we have to get out there sooner rather than later to present to you all. So.
And along those lines, we have done a couple of public meetings in specific wards. So if that's, that's something that, we definitely want to do in your ward, and would look for some recommendations that you may have. Not sure how much people are doing in person now, but that's what we would definitely be looking to at least do that in person, have a hybrid option, et cetera.
All right. My question is going to feel like it's coming out of left field. So I know an issue with a lot of these these kinds of smart light bulbs in general is that they're controlled over the internet, and the security of the lights themselves are not great. I guess I assume these lights are controlled over the internet in some way, or can you comment on that?
Yeah, our remote monitoring, again, I'm a technical person, but I'm not deeply technical. Our remote monitoring and control system is, connected to data. We've worked with DDOT quite a bit. There's quite a hefty verification and validation requirement on this project. And I couldn't talk to you about the encryption level or anything like that, but I know that those things do exist. And I don't think it's a current concern of DDOT's that the lights are hacked. But I guess that said, right, if something like that were to happen, we still have performance requirements under this project. And if lights are turning off in the middle of the night, well, that's on us to identify also through that system or in person or via 311 request. So it's still really on the asset manager and on PIDC to address issues as they come up, regardless of how they come up.
Yeah, I guess I just want to make sure that this is something that has been considered, because I think some of these security concerns can get ignored, but it sounds like DDOT is at least thinking about some of the potential security challenges and trying to design the system with that in mind.
Yeah, this is a design build project, which means the contractor has a pretty hefty role in the design, which is usually more efficient than something else. But DDOT has been very involved from a technological design standpoint, back from procurement all the way into, now as we're finalizing some of the software that's going to be in play for the next, 15 plus years.
Got it. Thank you.
Yeah.
Any other members of the committee that have questions? All right. Any members of the community that have questions? As a reminder, if you're dialed in, you can dial *9 to raise your hand. All right, seeing no questions, it seems like we are good to go.
Right,
Elise, Sharon, thank you so much for joining tonight and taking time out of your busy schedules to talk to us. Really appreciate it. And if one of you could just send me this presentation, I can get it uploaded to our website. So.
Oh, great. Thank you. All right, take care, y'all.
Thanks, everyone.
All right, next up, we have the East Towers Development Public Space application. I think these public space applications usually have quite a few people that come to present. So for those who are in the audience to present on this, if you could just raise your hand, we can get you promoted. David, is it just going to be you speaking tonight?
I am the primary presenter. I do know there should be other members of the team from the development community, but I guess it's me. We're going to do the exact opposite of other folks. It's just going to be streamlined presentation through me, and we'll then answer questions as we go through. I see Fred's joined as a panelist, so Fred should be here and possibly Lex as well.
I do not see a Lex in the chat.
Okay, or an Alex? No?
I don't see an Alex either. I see Teresa, but I assume Teresa's just here to listen in.
That's right. All right, well, we've got Fred at least. So Fred will join me in answering questions. I have our presentation that you all got, and it sounds like you sent around, which is great. I can share that and use that to guide the presentation if that works with you.
Yep, that's great.
Great, let me do that. All right, so hopefully everyone can see my screen. Go to the beginning here. So, and I can get started unless you all want to do an introduction.
Nope, I'll leave you to introduce the project to the community. And I know there are quite a few members of the community that are here to listen in, so it'll be good.
Great, well, thank you so much. So my name's David Atherble. I'm Land Use and Zoning Counsel for the developers here, which is a mix of low FGLA development and Davenport, DC. They have been working with Howard University, who owns the underlying land, to come up with a development for this block, which is sort of in the center of all of this sort of development that's been happening right near the Whole Foods, to come up with a plan for the site for a number of years. We were before the community about a year ago, maybe a little more than a year ago, pursuing an alley closing to help assemble the site. And that was before ANC 1B, when this was all ANC 1B. We are now through our design and going in for our public space permits. And so we wanted to share sort of an update on the design and some of the specific features of the public realm that we're proposing. So this is a shot of the building from the south looking north. It is primarily an apartment building with about 504 units. It's 10 stories plus a habitable penthouse. There's also about 15,000 square feet of retail on the ground floor, and it has underground parking and bike parking. And you will see how the circulation works around the site in some of the subsequent slides. I won't try to play architect and present the design, but I'll just briefly flip through a couple of images to give everyone a sense of what the building is on all four sides. So this is the south, sort of looking north along W Street up towards the building. And you can see this is really the front of the building. There's a large courtyard that's created, and you'll see that in the site plans as well, that sort of take the property from W Street and allow people to sort of flow into the site. You see 8th Street running up on the east side, and then you'll see 9th Street running up on the west side of the building. This is a view sort of from the other side of W Street. You're now sort of standing on 9th Street looking northeast, and again, gives you a sense of the building and how it sits relative to the surrounding buildings. Here's a sort of standing inside on W Street looking north directly into that courtyard to give you a sense of the building. And as you'll see in the site plans, they'll give a better sense of it. What we really try to do is sort of take this one block of W Street that Commissioner Footer, you were talking about just before on the streetlights, and make it sort of a moment inside of this block and a little bit of a place of respite. And then here's a view from the north looking down 8th Street at sort of what's, I guess, the northeast corner of the building looking south. Gives you a sense of sort of how the building fits up against the existing East Towers Residence Hall and how it ties into the overall feel and cadence of 8th Street going southward. So here's a site plan of the building, and it sort of gives you a sense of our overall orientation. W Street on the south, 9th Street on the west, 8th Street on the east, and Bryant Street on the north. And I wanted to note a couple of things here, all of which sort of show the ways in which this building and this development is sort of trying to really enhance the public realm. The first is you see along the south, the building itself is set back somewhat significantly from the sidewalk and the property line along W Street. There's this building restriction line that was created to really make sure that there's this sort of width inside the center of this large block of properties around us. And so that there's this open space that's created that we're able to sort of populate with a mix of planting and plaza to enhance the public realm. You can also see on both 9th Street and 8th Street on our west and east sides, the buildings pulled back from the red dashed property line. We voluntarily set back the building a few feet, which allows us to create wider sidewalks with street trees. You'll see in some of the dimension drawings, you'll have your sort of typical 5-foot tree boxes and 8-foot wide clear sidewalks. So we're I think deliberately creating a more engaging public realm around the site and a more comfortable realm for pedestrians. And then on the north side, you can see we're creating this new segment of Bryant Street that'll extend 1 block further east from where it is now, which will really function as the primary access for loading and service to the building, but also provide a connection between 8th and 9th Street. And I think that's important. And I think one other thing I wanted to note on this drawing regarding 9th Street, right now, our lot actually includes sort of the northern half of this block of 9th Street. One of the things we did when we closed the alley was we gave back the land that is currently that northern portion of 9th Street. So 9th Street will become a full, city-owned, dedicated and accepted public street all the way from W Street up to Bryant Street. So we actually, I think we ended up giving more land than we were getting through the alley closing. I'll move ahead to this drawing, and this is sort of really down at the ground level, giving you a sense of how the building relates to the surrounding sidewalks we're creating. And you can see not only that setback created by the building restriction line, but the courtyard on our own property, as people will kind of come in and flow in, and everyone will get to enjoy that open space. The primary retail spaces are concentrated to the south along W Street, so we get great opportunities for cafe dining and seating, both within that building restriction area and on our private property. You see again the setbacks to widen the sidewalks on both sides as well here. We've also included in here, from what we know from our surrounding development, what other buildings are doing and how the street grid will work. So you see Bryant Street's 2-way, 8th Street is 2-way, W Street's 2-way, 9th Street is 1-way southbound. You can also see here, and I think we took this in part from the coordination with the other teams, that where the sort of anticipated parking areas are contemplated on the east side of 8th Street. Both 8th and 9th Streets are really narrow rights of way. And so there's very limited space to create room for vehicles and parking and wide sidewalks and everything else we want to see. These aren't like downtown, rights of way where you have 90 feet to work with. We've got 40 or 50 feet, but between setting back our building and being strategic about what happens where, we can sort of balance the interests around the site. For the most part, this public space that you see is pretty standard DDOT fare, standard widths, standard tree box widths, standard materials. But there is one area where we're deviating from the strict requirements, and so one of our asks is for approval of this. And this is actually for the balconies on the building that project out. This is one of the odder things I've experienced in my career, where the balconies are located fully within our private property. They only come out to the property line. They're about 3 feet projecting from the building. But because we agreed as a part of that sidewalk, that voluntary setback for the sidewalks, we agreed to treat this area as if it's public space. We have to ask for permission for these projections into what is being treated as public space, because you wouldn't ordinarily be allowed to have a balcony projecting onto a narrow right of way like this. We've worked closely with DDOT and the Office of Planning to sort of plan how these would work. And this section here, which is a sample section of 8th Street, gives you a sense of how this works and doesn't interfere with the public realm. We don't start the balconies until the 4th floor, so they're quite high above the sidewalk, and they're even pretty high above what the anticipated tree height canopy would be of the nearby streets, and they're set back as well from those trees. So they really don't interfere with the sidewalk or the street trees. And then this next drawing gives you a sense of where the street trees end up being located relative to the balconies, which are highlighted in yellow. You can see in most cases, the balconies sort of sit in between the street trees, so that further reduces the likelihood of any sort of conflict. So that's the one sort of ask we have of our public space, in our public space package. The rest of it we expect will be relatively standard. Sort of wrap it up. We haven't yet filed our public space application. We anticipate doing that in the near future, but we thought it made sense to come to you all now to start the presentation and start discussing this with you all and get whatever feedback. So with that, I don't know if Lex or Fred have anything to add, but otherwise we'll stop here and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Really appreciate your time tonight. I'll just go in order of the folks that had raised their hands. So committee members, if you have any questions or comments, please raise your hands. And Commissioner Lancaster was actually first, if that's okay, Commissioner Footer. Or do you have a quick...
No, but just letting you know, it looks like Lex may have joined us and is in the attendees.
Oh, thank you. I will promote Lex then. Commissioner Lancaster, did you have a question?
Yes, I just wasn't sure if I was good to go. My question is about the balconies. The space underneath the balconies was designed for sidewalks and people to walk, correct?
Yes.
Is there any policy or anything put in place to protect people who are walking under those balconies in case something falls or something happens in that area? Like, are the people under who are going to be walking underneath safe 100%? Or if someone accidentally throws something over or something falls over, what does that look like as far as policy and procedure?
So maybe I'll take a step back. Typically, you can have balconies projecting over a sidewalk. They're allowed in most situations, and you'll see them all over the city. And in fact, on our W Street side of our building, we have them, and it's totally permitted by right. The only reason why we need to sort of have a special ask here for the balconies is not related to the fact that they're projecting over the sidewalk or how high or low they are relative to the sidewalk. It's purely a function of when you have rights of way narrower than 60 feet, the default rules typically don't allow projections into the public right of way, because it's presumed that you might get too close to something like street trade. And the reason why in our initial conversations with OP and DDOT, they've said this appears to be fine here is because basically by voluntarily setting back the building, we've created that separation that they want to see. In terms of, general rules and regulations around protection from what might fall from a balcony, it's sort of standard, probably standard common law rules over, what happens in terms of an act of potential negligence. But this is no different than any other balcony over any other sidewalk in the rest of the city in that context.
Okay, thank you.
Commissioner Footer?
Great. So I have a number of questions. I'll go through a couple of them, and then I want to be respectful of Josh and members of the community who want to ask questions too. So I'll try to get through as many as I can in a couple of minutes, and then maybe pass on and come back around to me. First, there are a lot of questions from members of my community and my constituency about when this is going to start. So do you have a projection on when construction or breaking ground will start on the east lot, on this property itself?
I'll look to Lex or Fred to answer that question if they've jumped up.
Yeah, hey everyone, this is Lex. Sorry I was late. Can you all hear me?
Yep.
Sorry, having some technical difficulties here. Right now we are targeting a mid to late January groundbreaking. I do want to note one sort of wrinkle in that would be sort of construction on, major excavation, which would be really the start of, having the site fully fenced off with construction entrances for excavating for the below grade parking. There is an early stage of work that you hopefully will see starting in October. That's going to be very limited to the north part of the site, up sort of adjacent to the Howard University dorms. There are a couple of existing transformers that you'll see sort of on 8th Street right up near the dorm parking garage entrance. Those two transformers have to be replaced and moved on to the dorm property. So those two transformers power the dorms. They need to be replaced and moved on to dorm property. So that work we're going to be starting hopefully in October. And so you will see some mobilization there. They'll be digging some trenches for some new conduits. That will be pretty minor. The real work should start in January.
Awesome. And how long roughly will it take to, and I guess, what does that look like? Is it deep drilling? Will it be weeks of drilling? What does it entail to move transformers?
No, that will be pretty minor. The trenches that we need for the new conduit are not that deep. That's, probably just like bulldozer and backhoe. I mean, that's going to be, again, pretty superficial work. The real digging, to get down for a 2-level below grade parking structure, that won't happen until January. And again, we're happy to come back with a full sort of construction site utilization plan, sort of showing how trucks will be accessing the site and all that stuff once we finalize that.
Yeah, that would be greatly appreciated. I speak for our building who's going to be directly impacted, and I'm looking at the transformers right now as you talk about it. There was very little communication from the reverb that had just finished right next door to us. And so there's still just a lot of confusion and a lot of fear within our building of how much we're going to be impacted by the drilling and when it's going to happen. I would love to talk to you guys about hours and when it's going to happen. I think the big concern was that it was happening extremely early in the morning, and for people who are working from home, things of that nature, it was extremely disruptive. And so I would love to talk to you guys about potentially seeing when that could start, like at 8 a.m. I know that you guys can start at like 7, but if there's any way we could do like an 8 a.m. and tack on a little bit later. I'm not completely familiar with what the rules are around that, but I'd love to chat with you guys about it. Roughly how much time in advance to actually doing that do you guys need to submit your construction permits? Is that the correct way to say it?
Yeah, so we have already submitted for the foundation of grade permit, which is the permit that allows us to dig and then come back up to grade with the parking structure. So that's in. And again, we're looking to pull that sort of first week of January.
Okay. So maybe we could follow up and have a conversation just about what the timing is. And then thank you for offering to come back and talk to us about the construction plans, because that would be great.
Sure.
We would very much welcome that.
Yeah, and we will make sure that we are ready to address work hours when we come back for the site utilization discussion.
Awesome. David, it looked like you were going to jump in there. Did you have something you wanted to add?
No, I don't.
No. Oh, okay. Next, I just wanted to ask about the sidewalk width. So can I actually present my screen for just a moment?
Absolutely. Let me stop.
All right, can you see?
Yes.
Yep. Gotcha now.
So when we talked to your colleagues who are doing the other lot across the street, they were, one of the big things that I was talking about was trying to turn 8th Street into a one-way. They came back with a really great plan. We had a lot of conversation about the benefits of it maintaining a two-way street, but we were taking away a row of parking, and they were talking about expanding the sidewalks. And as I was looking at your plan, I couldn't see the measurements that they had proposed. Have you guys had any conversation with, I believe you said he was the same person who's working on all 3 developments. I forget his name. I want to say maybe Robert.
Oh, is it one of the folks at Grove Slade, either Rob Schiesel or
Yeah, that would make sense. Yeah.
Who was doing specifically like the transportation
Mhm.
piece of it. So does this need to be updated, the presentation that you guys provided on the left, in order to show this 10 foot and 4 foot kind of measurements? Or am I looking at it incorrectly?
So they might be doing something slightly different on their side of the street in terms of the sidewalk width and tree box width versus what we're doing on. So this is our side of 8th Street, the west side, and they would be the east side, right?
Yeah, and the way that he said it was that this is their side, this is your side. So this is what they gave us in their presentation. And he was saying that, this would be their side, 8 and 4, and then this is your side, 10 and 4.
Oh, interesting. Well, this is the first I'm at least hearing about this.
Yeah.
This is the section that we've developed with DDOT, and had it in place for over a year now. Is sort of the 8-foot sidewalk and 5-foot tree pit. We had some back and forth with DDOT over exactly how wide the sidewalk should be. Should they be narrower? Should they be wider? Should the tree pits be 4 feet or 5 feet or 6 feet? And ultimately, this is what DDOT actually said to us. That's what we want to see on this block. Slightly wider, I think, tree boxes at 5 feet. And then they felt an 8-foot sidewalk, especially on these north-south streets, was sufficient given the volume of pedestrians that are expected. And that's pretty standard for DDOT on a sort of a secondary street versus a primary street. And also those widths were only achieved because we set back the building. But this at least is certainly what we're proposing and planning. I don't know how it relates to, we're talking about a 1-foot difference in 10 and 4 versus 8 and 5. I don't know what ripple effect that 1 foot could have across the balance of it. Because this is the first time I'm seeing this piece of it myself. So I'm looking at it now and trying to see what they have.
And my key takeaway is, thank you. We absolutely appreciate that you guys are expanding the sidewalk. That's kind of the goal in me talking to them about this. The agreement that we had kind of come to was that if this is the current structure right now, where it's 7 inches for parking, or 7 feet for parking on either side, and 8 feet for two-way traffic. As you mentioned in your opening remarks, the streets are very narrow. And so if we got rid of one row of parking, it would provide an opportunity to expand by 2 feet, 2 feet, and 2 feet, and then still also provide additional space for sidewalks. That's what we really wanted to do. We want to make sure that it's accessible to a variety of people, including people who may have mobility issues. safety issues. We love the idea of having streets and canopies in this neighborhood. As you guys have seen in your walks, it's kind of a concrete jungle, so greenery is definitely a priority. So I bring this up you have our support in expanding sidewalks and what you can do and to bring tree boxes. So if there's anything we can do to help with that conversation, you have it.
That's very helpful. And I think looking at this and doing a little math in my head, I think maybe the discrepancy is simply that they may have thought that there was, this dimension they have is 54 feet total, and it's a 50-foot right of way. So it could just simply be that they didn't appreciate that our setback was 3 feet versus 4 feet. And so that combined with sort of the allocation of sidewalk to tree boxes, probably the discrepancy.
Gotcha. And then speaking of the tree boxes, they had in their plan, they were talking about having fences around their tree boxes. We had kind of pushed back on that a little bit because from our understanding from DDOT, if developers put in fences around tree boxes, that's fine, but they will not maintain them. And so they become these kind of rusty, broken fences around trees over time. And so wanted to ask you guys, I can't tell from this design if that was something that you guys were anticipating or proposing. Do you guys have any thoughts on that or ideas on that?
Lex, do you know or Fred, do you know if the design includes tree box?
Yeah. So my understanding, and it's funny, this is something we have debated, I think, internally, and we have mentioned it to the city. I think the condition they prefer is these open tree pits. And the way they're done now, they are sunken. And we have said, hey, when you're stepping out of your car, you've got this open sort of depression that is kind of tricky to navigate. We would rather have some kind of gate around it. And for whatever reason, DDOT does not like that condition. So as far as I know, we are not planning on doing any kind of fence around the tree box.
Great.
So I think what we can do is we'll follow up and confirm that.
Yeah.
Okay. That would be great. And then speaking of, that's a great segue into some flooding. I couldn't tell from the designs you guys gave if there was any kind of sloping, gradation, things of that nature, what materials and permeability there might be. And I say all that because our neighborhood has experienced some flooding. We're kind of prone to it, and Atlantic Plumbing has had to do some construction on their own in the past year or two in order to try to mitigate some unanticipated flooding. And so as we're putting these designs together, I want to make sure that I bring up that flooding has been a persistent issue. And looking at some of the pictures, it looked like things might be like at grade or that the sidewalks had very little kind of curb appeal. Do you mind just kind of talking about flood mitigation and slopes?
Sure.
Yeah.
So Lex,
go ahead, Dave.
Okay. So I think in general, we're going to be using the same features that they're proposing on the other side of the street because they're all sort of DDOT's best practices. Things like, structural soil and especially things that extend sort of beyond the tree box pit itself to make sure there's the ample room for the roots to grow, and the pits themselves sort of work as a first stop LID system to start. The fact that ours are a little bit wider at 5 feet versus 4 feet, frankly, it increases the amount of permeability. I think the other key piece we have is that the W Street design, that building restriction area, and the amount of green space that's planted in there certainly also creates additional areas to capture and retain stormwater, as well as the green space within our courtyard will also do that. And if you go back to that that ground floor, the ground floor plan, that's the roof version, you can really see, from the roof all the way down through the various layers of courtyard, there's green sort of just about every level. So there's a lot of pervious surface being created here, both in the absolute and certainly compared to the existing situation, which is a totally impervious parking lot. So I think this will on balance, really be a really meaningful and positive change from that perspective. I won't attempt to get into the details of the sidewalk grading, other than I believe it's just going to be typical standard cross slopes that have a slight slope away from the building, towards the tree boxes and the curbs and gutter, which again are DDOT standard.
Yeah, and Dave, I can just add to that. So I am fairly certain that the new intersection of 8th and W in the lower right there, that's the low point, right? So it slopes down from lot 3, sort of Georgia Avenue. If you'll know, there's that big wall now on the lot 3 side. So there's a ton of grade that has to get made up. So it's going to be from Georgia Avenue down to 8th. You're going to have, it's going to step down. They have, so their plaza steps down. They have similar green area conditions. So you basically have this 2-block long, 25-foot wide plaza that's going to have a lot of the green areas that Dave referenced. And then from a grade standpoint, it all sort of converges here at 8th and W. But there's all this green area to catch water as it's coming down the hills. And then obviously, as we redo curbs and everything, we'll be able to address, water collection and all that. So,
Okay.
Dave said it. I mean, just a far improved condition is what's there now, which is just all impervious.
Yeah. Okay. I'm going to stop there I have 2 more questions, but I do want to provide others an opportunity. So I will kick it over to Commissioner Jacobson.
Yeah, thanks for all your great questions, Commissioner Footer. Couple of just quick ones. So I've had a lot of near misses going south on, on 9th from folks speeding out of the Whole Foods parking lot and turning right onto 9th. Has there been any thought to adding raised crosswalks in that area? I think it would do a lot to help slow down some of the traffic.
That's a good question. And your colleagues over in ANC 1B have asked a similar question about raised crosswalks. So I don't know if you all are just sharing a similar mind or getting at something that's a good.
I do talk to them a lot, but we have not talked about raised crosswalks. But we do all love raised crosswalks, so it doesn't surprise me.
So they've added that as well, and I think our teams is looking at that in a couple of different places. It's always a little bit of challenge because DDOT has requirements around them and when they can and can't be added. But I think we're certainly looking at it. One of the other things we'll look at too is sort of, and this will all be through DDOT and their manual of uniform control devices, but sort of signage and what sort of signage might come in with our project to further clarify for people leaving that garage which direction they should be turning and going for that reason as well. Lex, have there been any further discussions or detail on that?
No, not that I'm aware of. No.
Would it be helpful if we advocated to DDOT that they give you specific exceptions so you can add the raised crosswalks that you might want to? Because I'm happy to complain to DDOT.
It always helps when there's a coordinated message, for sure.
Yeah. I think one of the things we want to also do is as part of our diligence, part of it is figuring out how it would interact with the other elements of the design. If you add a raised crosswalk, sometimes that creates a problem where you've got a stormwater inlet planned or relate to a street light. And I say that because we were specifically looking at a couple of places, and it was one of these things where we thought we had all figured out, and then we started pulling at the sweater, it starts to unravel a little bit. And you've got the additional challenge here that, if it's a crosswalk, we're crossing over to another side of the street where it's property where we don't necessarily, it's all public space, so we can do whatever DDOT lets us do, but there's an element of coordination that's needed in it. So I certainly think that, we'll look and see where we can identify. And I think if there are particular areas that you think it's particularly helpful, that's helpful for us too, to sort of prioritize. So if the places to prioritize are crosswalks along Main Street or whatever, that would be helpful. And as we look at it and try to figure out what makes sense.
Yeah,
Yeah,
there's
and
one other thing.
Go ahead.
Sorry, one other thing I would add is, that unfortunately that block of 9th Street has sort of felt like a little lawless for a long time. Just the amount of construction that's been there, constant closures and cones and construction vehicles. I sort of feel like that condition has sort of encouraged a little kind of lawlessness. I mean, people park where they're not supposed to park. They drive too fast. I'm wondering if a lot of those things don't get addressed when the street's fully rebuilt. There's a building across the street. It feels a little more done. It really might impact, driver behavior. So, something to consider, that maybe we wait to see when everything's open and see if we need to address it at that point. But we can certainly look at the idea of raised crosswalks in the interim.
Yeah, Lex, I was going to say kind of something similar along those lines. I think we definitely want to study it. We want to make sure we're kind of we're measuring and a few times before we cut. So I think we definitely want to study it a little more, and understanding that we do have the ability to be reactive insofar as something is deficient. So
yeah.
The one thing I'll add is, if there end up being concerns about drainage with raised crosswalks, then maybe daylighting the crosswalk would be enough with the flex posts. Not that the flex posts do much to stop vehicles, but it's at least like another indicator people might be crossing here, and it seems like an okay stopgap when other methods aren't viable.
Right.
And then how deep are the tree pits? I assume they are actual pits and not just like grassy areas that have trees on them.
Yeah, they'll be.
Yeah.
You remember how deep they are, Lex?
Not specifically, but I believe it's that standard sort of bioretention pit that you
like
see
a
that's
couple
sunk
foot
in.
yeah.
I mean, it's some real depth.
Yeah, so it would at least help somewhat with the runoff issues that we see.
Yes, for sure. Yeah.
Cool. Thank you. Any other panelists that have questions?
I do, but if we want to go to community members first, I can hold on.
And any community members that have questions, as a reminder, if you have questions, please raise your hand. And if you are dialed in, you can raise your hand by dialing *9 and unmute or mute yourself using *6. All right, I've waited the 10 seconds I've been told to always wait for that question, and no one has raised their hand, so we can go back to you, Commissioner Footer.
Awesome. We talked about street lights in the previous presentation with the DDOT about the updated lights, so I can kind of hold on that one. The next one's around bike lanes. So we are huge advocates for bike lanes. And earlier this year, we had passed a resolution indicating that Bryant Street was a great candidate for potential bike lanes. And when we had the presentation from your colleagues across the street, they were definitely interested in, and we're going to take it under advisement of potentially having a bike lane on their segment of Bryant, considering it's going to be private, right? Both segments, your side's going to be private too. Is that something that you guys would be interested in entertaining?
I think
Not
it's
dedicated.
something. Yeah, Dave, I think we looked at this at some point, and I think the issue is on the north side of Bryant, on our section, you've got the Howard dorms, and there's actually a retaining wall that's sort of the wall of their garage, and that's elevated. And so you have this very, defined width that we have that we cannot, unfortunately, change. And I don't think a designated bike lane fits, given that we want two-way traffic up there. Dave, have you had any discussion, or do you recall any other discussion with Grove or anyone at DDOT about that?
I think, Bryant Street was one of the first things we did, because the first thing we had to figure out with DDOT was how are we going to get into the parking and loading?
Right.
And it was this very elaborate thing that arrived at this sort of answer, which is this sort of wider curb cut that allow you to get into the parking and loading all from one place. As part of that discussion, we talked about what Bryant should be, what its configuration should be. I think we actually originally proposed just a sidewalk without street trees, because we were thinking it's the back side of the building, you've got this wall on the other side, and that would have allowed us to either put, maybe parking on the side of the street or maybe a bike lane or something. But DDOT felt strongly, even though that's private, they really wanted to see a sidewalk that was wide enough plus street trees on that side of the building on the north side. So that again took up 13 feet of the space to allocate to everything else. And I'll add that while Bryant Street is private, it's subject to a public access easement. And again, DDOT sort of has controls through that. We've given them as part of, actually, that's something that Howard agreed to do over a decade ago as a part of the last campus plan, where they agreed to sort of reintroduce Bryant Street. So the long and the short of it is, I think, again, with wider streets, you can do bike lanes plus sidewalks plus tree pits plus traffic. We're just pretty narrow there. I think that width there is even narrower than it might be 30, 35 feet. So we just don't have a lot of real estate to deal with.
What if it was not a dedicated bike lane and it was, because if we're honest, this segment of Bryant is going to pretty much dead end onto 8th Street. And then the other side of Bryant, which would be, another like 20, 30 feet south, is going to be a one-way going westbound.
Okay.
And so they thought it might be that it could, because it may not have a very strong vehicular traffic, that it could be a candidate for shared use. So therefore it wouldn't be a dedicated bike lane. And that might still be a safe option. And that way we're not necessarily we're not requesting additional space or widening of the street, but at least having some dedicated, signage and materials to try and share the street. I think our overall desire is that there's pretty limited east to west connectivity, particularly between North Capitol Street and Sherman, and that Bryant Street seemed to be a good candidate for helping with some of that. So if there's any way is that something that you guys think might be possible with sharing instead of having a dedicated space, and understanding the limitation not being able to make it much wider, I think that would be something we'd be very interested in seeing and advocating for.
Yeah, we'll certainly talk to Grove Slade about that. Whether it's Sharrows or something indicated, my concern, and I may be wrong about this because I'm playing traffic consultant and I shouldn't do that any more than I should play architect or landscape architect. But because we have our loading there, and then of course you've got Whole Foods loading on the next segment, anything we do has to work getting all the way out to Sherman. And so that's going to really be the question: is do they think that that is actually a good place given the truck activity that's going to be happening in that space? But we'll talk to them and we'll see what they say and what their recommendation is, and I think we can go from there. Certainly hear you trying to get something, even if just one way westbound, sort of continuing that arc. We'll certainly talk to them and see what we can do. Lex, is that okay? I didn't promise.
Yes. Yep. No, for sure. Yeah. Look, we're trying to balance a lot here. Obviously, with the amount of new retail that's coming in here, we really want this to be, and the plaza that we have between the lot 3 side of W and our side of W, we see this as like this pedestrian refuge right in the middle of a very hectic neighborhood. And we really are trying to promote pedestrian traffic, bike traffic. The reality is there's gonna be a lot of cars, a lot of trucks loading. So, it's that puzzle of trying to just squeeze all this stuff in there, but we'll definitely look at it.
My last question is just around the the materials or the benches and the it looks like tables, things of that nature that are going to be all along the plaza, are those structures that will be built into the or put into the ground, or are they removable? I'm happy to give you my thought, because I'm looking right now at pink wooden park benches that become encampments and are easily moved around right in front of our building. And I think that that's kind of a concern, that it looks like you have a lot of stuff planned there. Is it something that's going to become a hazard?
Yeah, so we certainly want to be conscious of that. So the intention is for them to be fixed. We also are aware of not creating, surfaces for folks to sleep on, for instance, right? So benches, we're going to be thoughtful about making sure that the selections we make are really encouraging the use we want, which is for folks sitting for a time and then moving on. We have also talked to the Lot 3 team and the Bond Bread team about a coordinated effort throughout the neighborhood, so that even though each of our blocks and our buildings will be unique, we do want some common neighborhood elements, right? And so things like these outdoor fixtures, we thought was a really nice way to tie everything together so it feels coordinated. And so that's the plan right now, is to try to work with the neighbors on a coordinated package of these outdoor fixtures.
And I'll add, Lex, I'm sure that some of that seating we're showing there is sort of intended as sort of representational for a future retail tenant, restaurant, that sort of thing. And those would probably be much more the typical movable, they control them, they fold.
That's right. That's right. All of the tables you see up just to the south of our building, that's intended to show outdoor dining for retail tenants there. And yes, that would obviously be, pulled in at night or fenced off or, whatever.
One of the things we can do, is work to further sort of clarify where our proposed benches and other seating are on these drawings, because I think that would.
Awesome. That'd be great. All right. I think that, I did see there was one question from a community member coming back to just the construction plan. Do you know if there are plans right now for weekend construction, or is it just weekday?
I would need to talk to our project management team. I don't know if we've gotten to that detail level with our contractor yet, but we'll make sure we're ready to discuss that next time we come meet with you guys.
Great. Okay. Thank you. Thank you for answering all of my questions. I know there were a number of them, but I really appreciate it. The majority of the building is in my S&D, and as I mentioned, there are a number of people who came today who are my neighbors in Atlantic Plumbing and are very interested in learning about it. And this is the first public presentation we've had. As you guys mentioned, you guys came about a year and a half ago, and this ANC is brand new. And as I mentioned, and this isn't your fault, but there's still a little bit of concern that there's limited communication between the developers and the community. And so my job, my focus in the next couple of months and working with you is really trying to just take a lot of that rich information that you guys have and making sure that people feel prepared so there are no surprises.
So I can tell you that the Howard team has hammered us on this, saying you guys have to be engaged with the community. They're super conscious of making sure that for these projects there are no surprises and that you guys are informed and participating. So yeah, we're happy to come back as needed throughout the project here.
Thank you so much.
And I was just going to say, I'd be remiss if I didn't mention that I think there's a really great opportunity here for the area in all the developments that are being done. I think just like looking at the number of development projects that'll be done over the next decade, like that area is going to be significantly built up where it was 2 decades ago in the number of housing units and stores provided. And I think they're like, as much as we can do to pedestrianize it will make it even more successful. I mean, if you go to the waterfront on any day of the week, people love being there. And a lot of that is because you don't have to worry about getting hit by a car, and you can just like walk from shop to shop and go to a store and go to the Anthem and get all your needs right there without ever having to move the vehicle or anything like that. And I think it's probably too late for some of that for this area, given some of the agreements with DDOT and parking ramp access and things like that. But like anything that can be done to have a vision like that, I think will help make it super successful in the long run.
We agree. We agree. Neighborhood is successful based on that street plan experience and that pedestrian experience. And listen, I've lived in DC a long time. I used to live in this area. I love it. You know, hanging out on U Street or on Georgia Avenue can be stressful, right? It's very tight and it's hectic. And certainly the idea in this Duke district is to create more pedestrian friendly sort of open areas and something a little calmer. So that's what we're going for.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for taking so much time out of your evening and chatting with us tonight. We really appreciate it.
Thank you. And
Our pleasure.
I guess we'll plan to come back to the full ANC at your next meeting. Or is this enough? I'm sure at some point DDOT will want, a resolution from you all on this. So I guess that's the question, is what's the timing for you all and when we come to you on that?
Yeah,
Josh, if you don't mind, I can take it. So for coming to the full ANC, we really like to make sure that we don't take any action until the application has actually gone in. There are just certain things that could change, things of that nature, and we don't want to get ahead of our skis. So I would recommend that if you guys could, once you submit your application, and I'll get it because it's in my district. Actually, Josh, you probably will get it. I'm sorry, Commissioner Jacobson, you might get it too, because I think there's a segment that's in your district. We will get a TOPS notification, and we'll get copies of all of your materials. But once that's done, we can take a look at it, and if anything has changed, we may ask you to come back and just give us a heads up on what the changes have been. But if not, and Josh, chime in here. I don't want to speak for you, but maybe we can forego coming to the committee, and we can go straight to full ANC. But generally speaking, what would happen if the application was in at this moment is that we would vote tonight on whether to support it and anything that we may want to include in the resolution, and then it would go before the full ANC. You are not required to go to the full ANC. This is our goal in having you guys come to the committee, is that this is it for you. But clearly you're more than welcome to come. I apologize. I piped in on this because I'm the chair of the ANC, and so that would be my kind of direction on coming to the full ANC. But Josh, please chime in. Would you prefer to have them come here and have a formal resolution come out of this committee for the full ANC?
I mean, I think the committee member Schaaf has been one of the more engaged ones that isn't an ANC. And so if the timing works out such that it makes sense for us to just hear it at the full ANC, I think that is enough, and we can craft a resolution over email and just take it up directly at the full meeting. And yeah, I will echo his point that we're not expecting you to come back to the ANC meeting. We try to avoid that just because it makes our ANC meetings much longer and don't want to take even more time from you. So
we'll do whatever works best for you all, but that's helpful. And once we've filed, you'll get the notification, and we'll follow up too on next steps. That's very helpful. Thank you.
And if it's
Awesome.
if it's any consolation, based on what you guys have been talking about tonight, like, we're extremely excited. This is awesome. People are we want this to start happening as soon as possible. And so I said to your colleagues, and I'll say to you guys, we were looking forward to this starting at the end of this year. It sounds like it's been moved a little bit to the beginning of next year. If there's anything that we can do to help you guys as applicants with the city to move things along, we are your champions. We are your supporters. We're your advocates. We're here to help. And I mean that sincerely. Please do not hesitate to reach out to us, because we're excited for this to happen.
We really do appreciate that. So thank you. We will let you know for sure.
Thank you.
all right. Well, again, thanks everyone. Really appreciate your time tonight.
Our pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you. Good night.
Just a couple of more items remaining. We might want to take one of them offline, but the next one is the Hoops for Hope amplified sound permit. I don't think he was able to make it tonight. He said something came up, but if anyone is in the audience to represent that, please feel free to raise your hand. Okay, I am not seeing anyone raise their hands. So yeah, this is an event that'll take place at Banneker Park on Saturday, September 23rd, 2023. The request here is for an amplified sound permit, so that allows them to have amplified sound in the park. I will say, generally speaking, Banneker amplified sound permits have been fine with the residents in the past. If there are any residents on the call that want to speak up, feel free to raise your hand, but the portions of Banneker that usually have the amplified sound permits are far enough away from residences that the noise is not bothersome. And they have also agreed to share out a cell phone number. So if there are any issues, we can easily contact them and ask them to turn down the volume a little bit. But if there are any questions from the committee member, I'm happy, or from the committee, I'm happy to follow up with the Hoops for Hope people, just to make sure that we're on the same page and that we get your questions answered. And then the ANC will also be at the event since we are sponsoring the event so that we can let more people know about our ANC. So if committee member Shah, if you want to stop by and say hi, you're more than welcome to as well.
Sounds great. Yeah, thank you.
If I can just add, Josh, and if you have any details, it's from 11 to like 4, right? And the amplified noise would be, are they having a band?
They have music playing over speaker, and the announcers would also be using that same speaker to like call out the results of the games. So I guess I should clarify, it's a basketball tournament. I believe there are 3-on-3 and 5-on-5 tournaments throughout the day. The first couple of hours, there are tables set up on one half of the court so people can meet members of the community and organizations. And then after those first couple of hours, it usually ends up being both basketball courts at Banneker being used. And the hours that they would have the amplified sound are from 10 a.m. to 4 p.m. and the event is from 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. There will also be publicly available restrooms because Banneker is right there, and they'll be making sure that any trash that is discarded from the event gets picked up afterward.
Awesome. Thank you.
This is a Howard University event?
It is, the organization is founded by Howard alumni, but it is not a Howard event.
Okay, great.
Any other questions or comments? All right, the last item on the agenda is, I think this went out to all ANCs, but the Committee on Transportation and Environment will be having a hearing on October 4th for improving street safety and reducing dangerous driving. So if there's anyone here in the audience or any of the committee members that want to testify on that, there will be an opportunity to sign up for both oral testimony and just written testimony. I would like to, as an ANC, come up with something that we want to say to the committee that we can pass as a resolution, say like, here's a script that someone from the ANC can read. We did work on that resolution in July around the temporary tags and booting and towing vehicles with greater than $1,000 in speeding fines. So if there are other ideas for what folks want to include in there, I think we should maybe brainstorm. I don't know we need to do it now just because it is getting late and I want to be respectful of people's time. But we can start brainstorming and put together a letter for the ANC that could then be read at the October 4th hearing. Some of the ideas that might be discussed there are around automated traffic enforcement and whether or not to add points to a driver's license associated with ATE cameras, suspending licenses upon arrest for certain violations. So that includes like a DUI. Maybe there are other violations that should be included in that. Improving the enforcement of fake and expired tags. And then just other ideas around increasing penalties for repeated dangerous driving. I guess are folks here generally supportive of the idea of us having some testimony prepared for that?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Encourage it.
I would also know that what time is the hearing? Because the next TPS meeting is also scheduled for that evening.
It's actually a really good point. I did not make that connection until just now.
I think it's during the day.
It's during the day, but I could imagine it being one of those hearings that goes on really late. The page is loading.
Do we want to sign up now to get a good spot, and then we don't always have to use it?
Yeah. The hearing's from 9:30 to 5:30. So I will sign up to at least get a spot, and then I think the idea there would be I would be testifying on behalf of the commission if we can get a letter together for the commission. But if other folks want to testify on their personal behalf, then that is an option too. And I would encourage folks to do so, because the more voices, the better. All right, anything else?
Josh, I will add that to the agenda for our September meeting.
Perfect, thank you.
There was nothing that came out of today's meeting that needs to be added? Is that
we did not pass any resolutions. No. It might make sense just to have me on the agenda still, just to give a quick update on the items that we talked about, because we covered a lot today. But
oh yeah, no, you'll be still calling
okay.
it. I like to add live what updates or what resolutions to add, but you'll still be called upon in order to give a presentation or an update.
Cool. It sounds like we are good to go, though. So I will make a motion with unanimous consent that we adjourn this month's TPS meeting until the next TPS meeting, which will take place on Wednesday, October 4th at 7 p.m. Are there any dissents? Seeing as there are no dissents, this meeting is now adjourned at 8:42 p.m. Thanks, everyone.
Have a good night.
Thank you. Good night.